This is the story of Ma Yun, known to the world as Jack Ma, a man who proved that grit, vision, and an unshakable belief in the future are worth more than any pedigree or resume. It is a story not just of business success, but of the triumph of the underdog. The boy who failed forward. In the dusty streets of Hangzhou, China, in the 1960s and 70s, there was little to suggest that Ma Yun would become one of the world's most powerful men. Born into a family of humble means during the Cultural Revolution, Ma was scrawny and often got into fights with classmates who were bigger than him. "I was never afraid of opponents who were bigger than me," he later recalled, a trait that would define his business career. While he struggled academically, failing his primary school examinations twice and his middle school exams 3 times, he possessed a unique hunger for connection. After Nixon visited Hangzhou in 1972, tourism opened up. Every morning for 9 years, regardless of the weather, a young Ma rode his bicycle 40 minutes to the Hangzhou International Hotel. There, he offered free tours to foreign tourists just to practice his English. He gained a global perspective that few in China had at the time, and it was a tourist who gave him the nickname Jack. The wall of rejection as he entered adulthood, the world seemed intent on telling Jack no. The string of failures he endured would have broken most spirits. University. He failed the National College Entrance Exam twice. On his 3rd try, he finally got into Hangzhou Teachers Institute, considered the worst university in the city. The job hunt. After graduating, he applied for 30 different jobs and was rejected by every single one. Police. When he applied to be a police officer, he was the only one of 5 applicants rejected. The reason? You're no good. The famous KFC incident. When KFC came to his city, 24 people applied for jobs. 23 were hired. Jack Ma was the only one sent home. He was deemed unemployable by the standards of the day. But where others saw a failure, Jack saw a path clearing for something else. He eventually became an English teacher, earning only $12 a month, but he loved his students and they loved him. He was a natural leader, even if the economy hadn't realized it yet. The $33,000 key and the Internet. In 1995, Jack traveled to the United States as a translator. In Seattle, a friend introduced him to the Internet. Jack had never touched a keyboard before. He was terrified he might break the expensive machine. "Search for something," his friend urged. Jack typed the word, beer. The results poured in: American beer, German beer, Japanese beer. But Jack noticed something missing. There was no Chinese beer. Curious, he typed, China. Nothing. No data about China existed on the Internet. At that moment, a light bulb went off. If we can put China on the Internet, he thought, we can change the world. He returned to China with a crazy idea. He borrowed $2,000 to launch China Pages, a directory for Chinese businesses. It was a struggle. The Internet was slow, it took hours to load a page, and businesses didn't believe him. He was called a con man. China Pages eventually failed after being pressured into a joint venture with a government entity, but the seed was planted. Jack had tasted the future. The apartment in Hangzhou. In 1999, the Internet bubble was growing, but Jack Ma was jobless again. He gathered 17 friends and former students in his small, bare apartment in Hangzhou. He spoke to them for 2 hours, outlining a vision for a new company. He didn't want to copy Amazon or eBay. He wanted to champion small business. He famously told them, "Our competitors are not in China, but in Silicon Valley. If we have that kind of team spirit, we can beat the government agencies and big famous companies." They scraped together $60,000. They named the company Alibaba, a name that evoked open sesame, unlocking treasures for small merchants. The early days of famine, the first 3 years, were brutal. Alibaba made 0 revenue. They expanded too fast, burned through cash, and almost went bankrupt. Jack had to make tough decisions, laying off staff in international offices. But he held on to one core belief: put the customer first, the employee second, and the shareholder third. By 2002, they finally turned a profit of $1. It was enough. They survived. The war with eBay. Just as Alibaba found its footing, a giant cast its shadow over China. eBay, the American behemoth, entered the Chinese market by buying a local company, EachNet. They dominated 90% of the consumer-to-consumer market. They had deep pockets and global technology. Jack decided to fight back. He launched Taobao, digging for treasure, in 2003 to compete directly with eBay. The experts laughed. Alibaba was a B2B company. They knew nothing about consumers. eBay was a Goliath. Jack Ma, however, knew the Chinese market better. He knew that Chinese users didn't trust online transactions yet. He employed a daring strategy. Free versus fees. eBay charged listing fees. Jack declared Taobao would be free for 3 years. Trust. He developed Alipay, an escrow service where money was only released to the seller once the buyer received the goods happy and intact. This solved the trust deficit in China. Guanxi. He allowed buyers and sellers to chat directly via instant messenger, mimicking the social haggling culture of Chinese street markets. eBay stuck to its global model. Taobao adapted to the local culture. Within a few years, Taobao had captured the market. eBay shut down its main China site and withdrew. The crocodile in the Yangtze River had defeated the shark in the ocean. The $25 billion validation. Jack Ma's resilience paid off in a way the world had never seen. Alibaba became the engine of Chinese commerce. They created Singles Day, November 11th, a shopping festival that dwarfed Black Friday and Cyber Monday combined. On September 19, 2014, Jack Ma stood on the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange. He didn't ring the opening bell himself. He let 8 Alibaba customers, including a former Olympian and a bracelet seller, ring it. Alibaba's IPO raised $25 billion, the largest in history at the time. The boy who was rejected by KFC was now the richest man in China. During an interview that day, he was asked about his rejections. He smiled, that characteristic, wide grin, and said, "I'm very thankful for all the mistakes I made. In this world, if you want to be successful, you have to get used to rejection. We are not that good. We are not Superman. It's about not giving up." Epilogue: The teacher returns. Jack Ma stepped down as executive chairman in 2019, handing the reins to his successors to focus on philanthropy and education. He returned to his roots, not as a tycoon, but as Teacher Ma. His story remains the ultimate blueprint for the underdog. It teaches us that IQ, resumes, and initial approval mean nothing compared to EQ, emotional quotient, and LQ, love quotient. The grit to endure failure and the desire to solve problems for others. Jack Ma didn't succeed because he was the smartest tech genius in the room. He succeeded because when the world handed him 30 rejections, he didn't change his dream. He just changed his approach. The secret weapon, the iron triangle of leadership. While the IPO made Jack Ma famous, the true success story lies in how a former English teacher managed to lead thousands of engineers and MBAs. Jack often joked, "I know nothing about technology, and I know nothing about finance." So, how did he lead a tech giant? He operated on a philosophy he called the iron triangle of success, which prioritized human connection over raw intelligence. IQ, intelligence quotient. Jack believed you need IQ to be successful, but IQ alone only makes you employable. He famously hired people smarter than himself. "If I am the smartest person in the room," he said, "then I am doing something wrong." EQ, emotional quotient. This was Jack's superpower. He believed EQ is what makes a leader. IQ gets you hired, EQ gets you promoted. In the brutal early days, it was his EQ, his ability to empathize with frustrated employees and terrified customers, that kept the team together when paychecks were thin. LQ, love quotient. This was his unique addition. Jack argued that while machines will always have higher IQs, processing data faster, and perhaps simulate EQ, they will never have LQ. LQ is the love for the challenge and the love for your team. You must genuinely care about the people you serve. This love quotient was why Alibaba focused on helping the little guys, the small mom-and-pop shops, rather than chasing big corporate contracts. The culture of the crazy. To survive the pressure of competing with giants, Jack Ma created a corporate culture that was intentionally unconventional. He needed his team to think differently, so he forced them to be different. The handstand rule. In the early days, Jack implemented a strange requirement. Every staff member had to learn to do a handstand against the wall for 30 seconds. Why? It wasn't for fitness. "I want you to see the world from a different perspective," he told them. "When you are upside down, everything looks different." It was a physical metaphor for innovation. When a problem seemed impossible, like beating eBay, he wanted his team to flip their perspective. The Warshan sword debate Jack was obsessed with wuxia, Chinese martial arts fiction. He gave every employee a nickname based on kung fu characters. He turned business meetings into sword debates, encouraging open conflict and debate rather than polite agreement. He believed that friction generated heat, and heat generated energy. The six-vein spirit sword, he codified the company's values into 6 principles, known as the six-vein spirit sword, a reference to a martial arts move. Customer first, team work, embrace, change, integrity, passion, commitment. These weren't just posters on a wall. Half of an employee's performance review was based on their results. The other half was based on how well they embodied these 6 values. You could be the top salesman, but if you lacked teamwork, you were fired. The power of women. One of the most overlooked aspects of Jack Ma's success story is his reliance on female leadership. In a tech world dominated by men, Jack took a different path. "Women are the secret sauce of Alibaba," he once said at a conference. At one point, 47% of Alibaba's employees and 33% of its senior management were women. Jack believed that in the 21st century, success wouldn't be about muscles or power, but about wisdom, care, and user experience, areas where he felt women often excelled. Men think about themselves more, women think about others more, he argued. In a service-oriented platform like Alibaba, this empathy was a strategic business advantage, not just a diversity statistic. It was the intuitive understanding of the consumer that allowed Alibaba to outmaneuver its rigid, male-dominated competitors. The Mistake Book. Perhaps the most inspiring part of Jack Ma's philosophy is his obsession with failure, even after he became a billionaire. He famously stated that if he ever wrote a book about his life, he wouldn't call it How I Succeeded. He would title it Alibaba, 1001 Mistakes. He wanted the world to know that his empire was built on a foundation of errors. They launched a search engine, Yahoo China, and failed. They tried to conquer the US market too early and failed. They hired fancy MBAs who destroyed company culture and had to be let go. "My secret," Jack said, "is that we don't worry about making mistakes. We worry about not correcting them." This mindset turned fear of rejection into fuel for growth. Every rejection, from the police force, from Harvard, which rejected him 10 times, from investors, was just data. It was feedback telling him which door was locked so he could find the open window. The legacy of the small. Jack Ma's story is not just about becoming rich. It is a testament to the power of the small. He was a small man, from a small background, who fought for small businesses. He proved that you don't need to be a giant to defeat a giant. You just need to be faster, care more, and refuse to stay down when the world pushes you over. From a boy who couldn't get a job at KFC to the founder of a digital economy, Jack Ma's life serves as a permanent reminder to every dreamer facing rejection today. Today is hard. Tomorrow will be worse. But the day after tomorrow will be sunshine. The art of letting go. Most founders hold onto their companies until their dying breath. They see the business as their child, impossible to give up. Jack Ma, however, saw the business as a student, and a student eventually needs to graduate from the teacher. In September 2018, exactly 1 year before his official retirement, Jack handed out a business card that didn't say Executive Chairman. It simply listed his favorite identity, Teacher Ma. He announced he would step down on his 55th birthday. The world was shocked. Alibaba was at its peak. Why leave now? Jack's reasoning was profound. "I don't want to die at the office. I want to die on the beach." He spent 10 years grooming his successors, building a partnership structure that ensured the company didn't rely on one person. He handed the reins to Daniel Zhang, a quiet, analytical accountant, the complete opposite of Jack's flamboyant, charismatic personality. It was the ultimate act of leadership, making yourself unnecessary so the company could survive without you. The storm and the silence. Every great story has a twist in the final act. For Jack Ma, the happily ever after hit a massive roadblock in October 2020. Jack was preparing for the IPO of Ant Group, Alibaba's financial arm. It was set to be the biggest stock market debut in human history, bigger than Alibaba's own record. At the Bund Summit in Shanghai, Jack stood on stage and did what he had always done. He spoke his mind. He criticized the global banking system, calling it an old people's club, and famously remarked that traditional banks had a pawn-shop mentality. This time, however, his boldness backfired. Days later, Chinese regulators summoned him. The Ant Group IPO was abruptly suspended. The $37 billion listing evaporated overnight. The disappearance for 3 months, the most famous man in China vanished. The world speculated, was he arrested? Did he flee? He hadn't fled. He was doing something he hadn't done in decades. He was listening. For a man who built an empire on loud, brash confidence, this was his hardest lesson. He retreated to study, to reflect, and to recalibrate. It proved that even after conquering the world, life will still humble you. But true to his character, Jack didn't crumble. He adapted. The return to the roots. When Jack Ma finally re-emerged, he wasn't at a tech conference or ringing a stock bell. He was in a greenhouse. In the years following the Ant Group crisis, Jack traveled to the Netherlands, Japan, and Thailand. But he wasn't there for luxury vacations. He was visiting research labs for agriculture and fishing technology. The man who digitized China's commerce was now obsessed with how to grow food better in harsh environments. He saw that the future wasn't just in the cloud, it was in the soil. The Gobi Desert Project. He began planting trees in China's deserts to stop sandstorms. Rural education. He visited rural schools in China, advocating for better pay for teachers who worked in isolated villages, the very job he once held for $12 a month. He had come full circle. He was no longer the crocodile in the Yangtze. He was simply Jack, the curious student, trying to solve the next set of problems. The legacy in Africa. Perhaps the most touching chapter of Jack Ma's post-CEO life is his love affair with Africa. Jack saw his younger self in the youth of Africa, hungry for success, underestimated by the West, and lacking infrastructure. He didn't just send money, he launched the Africa's Business Heroes competition. He flew to African nations, not to meet presidents, though he did, but to sit on stages with young entrepreneurs. He told them, "Don't try to be the next Alibaba. Be the first you." He committed millions to fund African startups, telling them the story of his 30 rejections. He wanted to prove that the Alibaba model wasn't a Chinese miracle, but a universal possibility for the underdog. The final verdict, the gift of rejection. Looking back at the trajectory of Ma Yun, from the skinny boy on the bicycle to the global icon, one truth stands out above all others. The 30 rejections were not failures. They were protections. If KFC had hired him, he would have been a manager serving chicken today. If the police force had accepted him, he would have been a retired officer in Hangzhou. If Harvard had said yes, he might have become a corporate consultant. Every no he heard was the universe steering him away from a good life, so he could find a great life. Jack Ma's story ends, or rather, continues, with a simple message for anyone facing a closed door. A rejection is just a redirection. Keep knocking, or better yet, build your own door.